10 years after its launch, Etherworld had completely stagnated. With no new content, the community slowly rotted away in boredom. Players began resorting to madness-raiding bosses in their underwear or endlessly repeating the same old dungeons. It was a desolate, repetitive loop within a dying digital kingdom where only the eccentric dared to remain. Perched atop the towering spire, overlooking a stagnant digital realm, stood a lone figure. In a world where players sought easy power, he chose the path of thorns. He was the eccentric legend who mastered the trash character. Everyone else abandoned the one with the worst stats and highest difficulty. He is Beak Useal, the only player who dared to embrace the impossible. In a world woven from mana, I alone am empty. While others command blinding storms of fire and light, I stand barren, unable to manifest even a spark. Beak Useal, the anomaly of Etherworld, the only soul incapable of offensive magic. Amidst the dazzling brilliance of true wizards, I am nothing but a silent, powerless extra. A glitch forgotten by the light. Of all the spells in Etherworld, fate handed me the absolute worst. Blink. A wizard's nightmare, long cooldown mana draining, a suicidal 2-second paralysis, and worst of all, random direction. One wrong move, and you're smashing face first into a wall or plummeting to your death. It was the ultimate garbage skill, a joke amongst players. But for me, it was the only card I had left to play in this rigged game. While everyone else quit, I persisted. 10 years of grinding to tame Blink, a suicidal, random skill that no one used. I learned to cancel the spell within 0.1 seconds, turning a fatal flaw into a lethal weapon. They called it trash. I Magiet God tier. In this split second of frozen time, I am not an extra. I am the absolute ruler of speed. The sky burned crimson as the black demon dragon descended, a colossal nightmare woven from shadow and despair. Its sheer presence suffocated the world, a true final boss that shouldn't even exist in this genre. While top-tier mages fell like leaves before its magic immunity, I stood alone, a mere glitch in the system. Facing this insurmountable god of destruction, I felt not fear, but a strange, reckless thrill. This wasn't just a boss fight. It was an execution. 99% reasons. Infinite absorption. To the wizards of Etherworld, the Black Dragon was an invincible nightmare, a calamity that swallowed all spells. Rankers fell in despair, crying out that it was a bug, but to me, it was just a target. While they relied on mana, I relied on steel. My blink is merely movement. My blade is purely physical. In a world ruled by magic, the one man without it became the god's only natural predator. In the split second before the world burned, I unleashed my secret. Blink, the trash skill, closed the gap instantly, placing me inches from the dragon's snout. While mages cowered, my blade descended, fueled not by mana, but by sheer, overwhelming physical might. But I raised physical attack power. A thunderous impact shattered the dragon's defenses. Kwang, in a world of magic, the one who rejected it delivered the killing blow. The colossal black dragon shattered into fragments of data, leaving behind a silence more deafening than its roar. A system message floated before my eyes. You defeated the final boss. Black Knight 13 March. I blinked, the adrenaline fading into disbelief. What? The final boss. I had merely been on a quest to find a missing heroine. To kill a god-tier boss I didn't even know existed. It was absurd. Yet, as the only player to raise physical stats, I had achieved the impossible. Wow, looks like I'm the only one who has caught it. Back in the real world, the community exploded. Forums were ablaze with confusion and anger. My character got deleted. A black dragon appeared out of nowhere. The game's stagnant waters were finally churning. Yet, amidst the chaos, one strange detail emerged: no one else had defeated the boss. While top rankers cried bug over its magic immunity, I realized the truth. In a world obsessed with magic, only I, the trash physical build, had brought the god to its knees. I was alone at the peak. The thrill of victory was instantly shattered by a deafening beep. Gravity vanished, and my vision blurred into a kaleidoscope of vertigo. As the familiar ceiling of my room dissolved into the void, a chilling system message echoed in my mind. Please, reach the true ending. Then, the world went pitch black. The thrill of victory was instantly shattered by a deafening beep. Gravity vanished, and my vision blurred into a kaleidoscope of vertigo. As the familiar ceiling of my room dissolved into the void, a chilling system message echoed in my mind, with the wrong ending. 90% of the ether world has been destroyed. My consciousness faded, leaving only a final plea echoing in the absolute darkness. Please, reach the true ending. The game was over, but my reality had just begun. A splitting headache tore me from sleep, forcing a groan from my lips. Clutching my throbbing temples, a deluge of foreign memories crashed into my mind like a tidal wave. The biting wind howling through the cracks of the ruined hut was far, too real to be a dream. The screen was gone. I was no longer just a player behind a keyboard. I had physically become Beak U Seal. The biting cold was no match for the shock freezing my veins. I picked up a shard of a broken mirror, my reflection staring back, but it wasn't me. The face was younger, softer, a teenage version of myself I hadn't seen in a decade. I've gotten younger, haven't I? Disbelief clouded my mind. I was 29, yet the boy in the glass was a high schooler. Reality had warped, turning back the clock and throwing me into a body that felt both alien and intimately familiar. Disbelief gave way to a cold realization as a holographic message flickered into existence before my eyes. Episode 1. Avoid the pursuers and run away. My breath hitched. This wasn't just a random hallucination. It was the exact prologue quest for Beak U Seal. I wasn't just in his body, I was trapped inside the very game I had mastered, forced to play the tutorial of a character doomed to fail. My suspicions were confirmed. Standing up in the dilapidated hut, I looked down at my attire, a medieval tunic, rough trousers, a simple dagger at my waist, and a pocketful of dry biscuits. It was the exact starter kit for Beak U Seal, the trash character. Really? I muttered, pinching my arm. The pain was sharp and real. This wasn't a dream. I was truly starting from zero, just like in the game, but with my life on the line. It was difficult to understand the situation properly, but clarity arrived in the form of a holographic message floating in the cold air. Episode 1, Avoid the pursuers and run away. My eyes widened in shock. This wasn't a hallucination. It was the game's exact prologue. The familiar text confirmed my worst fear just as the heavy crunch of footsteps approached the crumbling hut. I wasn't just observing Beak U Seal anymore. I had to survive his fate. Time seemed to freeze as the Azure system window flashed before my retinas. Blink. A notorious trash skill with a fatal 3-second cooldown. Yet, as my pupil constricted, reflecting that electric blue light, fear vanished. My body remembered what my mind couldn't process. Decades of mastery surged through my veins. Instinct screamed louder than logic. In this deadly reality, this single, broken spell was the only weapon I needed to survive. The wooden door burst open, shattering into the biting cold. Instinct understands timing better than the brain. Blink. My body tore through space, a streak of azure lightning leaving only afterimages behind. What the... Catch him! The pursuer's shouts lagged behind my speed. In a split second, I materialized instantly before them, their eyes widening in shock. But as the azure light faded, I found myself surrounded, weapons already leveled at my throat. The ground erupted as a barrage of spells, and arrows slammed into the snow where I had stood milliseconds ago. Thudaduk. I rolled forward, the shockwave grazing my back. Blink! Was he a wizard? The pursuers' confusion echoed through the icy air. They expected the infamous 2-second stiffness to leave me vulnerable, a sitting duck. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. I am Beak U Seal, the flash wizard who mastered the impossible. That limit didn't apply to me. The mountain terrain was treacherous, yet I navigated it with a fluidity that defied physics. With each blink, I became a blur, weaving through jagged rocks and icy slopes. But my pursuers were relentless, their magic boots allowing them to close the distance effortlessly. Using Blink here, he's insane. Their disbelief was palpable. For over 30 minutes, I had been sprinting, my breath ragged, my lungs burning. This wasn't just evasion. It was a deadly dance, where one misstep meant certain death. A shiver crawled up my spine, a sensation as tangible as a phantom hand. The feeling came again, mana leakage delay. My curse was also my salvation. My body, unable to hold mana, had become a conduit for sensing it. I didn't need to turn around. My sixth sense painted a vivid picture in my mind, a wind-enchanted arrow curving through the air, seeking my back. I felt every object flying from behind vaguely. In a world of magic, my defective body was the ultimate radar. A sheer cliff blocked my path, the wind screaming in my ears like a banshee. Floating stones drifted ahead, but they were spaced 5 to 6 meters apart, impossible to cross without magic. I needed Blink. Yet, with its fatal 3-second cooldown, pausing on those precarious rocks meant becoming a sitting duck for a rain of arrows. This wasn't a path to safety. It was a checkmate devised by a cruel reality. I glanced back over my shoulder. The pursuers were closing in, their bloodlust palpable in the freezing air. Ahead lay a dizzying cliff with floating stones spaced too far apart. To cross, I needed Blink, but its cooldown was a fatal shackle. If I hesitated on those precarious rocks, for even a second, I would become a living target for their arrows. I was trapped between the abyss and the blade. Escape was impossible. The only way out was to stop running. A cold realization washed over me. To survive, evasion wasn't enough. I have to kill them. Strangely, the thought brought no guilt, only a chilling calculation. My grip tightened on the dagger, my eyes losing their fear. This wasn't murder. It was the most efficient path to survival. I didn't just hope to win. I knew I could. I feigned a frontal charge. Anticipating a Blink strike, the warrior instinctively raised a shield to guard his neck. Fatal mistake. I didn't vanish. Instead, I spun around, plunging my dagger with both hands into the back of the prone spearman behind me. Poom! He died instantly, unable to even scream. In this merciless reality, a split-second deception is deadlier than any magic. Shit! The warrior's eyes widened in despair, realizing his fatal mistake too late. He had shielded his back, leaving his throat completely exposed to my frontal assault. Pooh! The spear tip pierced through his neck without a shred of hesitation. As his heavy body collapsed into the cold snow, a holographic message illuminated the darkness, confirming my survival. My fingers throbbed, not with pain but with the pulse of the life I had just extinguished. I stared into the glassy eyes of the magic archer, my dagger still buried in his neck. There was no guilt, no remorse, only the cold, hard logic of survival. Because I only killed him so I could live, as the warrior leader's confused shout rang out. Questioning my impossible speed, I knew one thing for certain: in this ruthless world, hesitation was a death sentence. With a powerful kick, I launched the archer's corpse toward the oncoming warriors. A shower of blood blinding their advance. Blink was still on cooldown, but I wasn't helpless. He's using unusual movements. Hurry up and kill him! The leader's frantic command echoed, but I was already moving. Seizing the fallen archer's bow and arrows, I prepared my next move. In this desperate dance of death, even a corpse is a weapon, and every second brought us a step closer to survival. It was my first time using an upward blink, and the distance adjustment was a chaotic gamble. My foot slipped, finding no purchase on the icy bark. Turk? Ugh. Panic flared, but my new body reacted faster than thought. Fingers dug into the branch, muscles screaming as I hauled myself up with raw strength. I had no time to breathe, no time to think. This wasn't a game anymore. It was a vertical race against death. I hadn't even had time to string the bow properly before hiding. Peering around the tree, I spotted the spearman. Squeak, the makeshift shot, was clumsy, the aim slightly off. Did I miss? No. The arrow found its mark, piercing the spearman's foot. My feet. His agonizing cry confirmed it. I hadn't killed him, but I had crippled his mobility. In this hunt, a wounded prey was as good as a dead one. Moving on to the next. Phew! Another fireball screamed through the air, but I was already gone, launching myself from the tree branch before it could strike. Pooh! The explosion tore through the canopy behind me, but the wet snow stifled the flames. My body is flying through the air. It was a desperate gamble, a leap of faith into the freezing void. But in this deadly game of cat and mouse, staying still meant death. I had to keep moving, keep adapting, keep surviving. In mid-air, gravity became an adversary as I plummeted from the tree, but desperation is an excellent teacher. I twisted my body, launching myself towards another branch with a frantic kick. Whirrick! As my feet found purchase, my hand instinctively reached for the quiver, knocking an arrow in one fluid motion. The world was a blur of motion and adrenaline, but my focus narrowed to a single point: survival. Fibube. The wizard's chant was cut short as I slammed into him, carrying the raw momentum of my blink. Coup. A violent explosion erupted between us, a magic rebound caused by his interrupted spell. I was thrown back, skidding across the snow as searing heat clawed at my skin. It hit the floor with a stifling sensation. My body groaned in protest, scorched and battered, but alive. In a world of magic, sometimes the best counterspell is a reckless tackle. I rose from the snow, my gaze locking with the armored warrior leader. My body was scorched, my breathing ragged, but my grip on the dagger never wavered, reaction speed like a ghost. "Who the hell are you?" His question was laced with fear and confusion. He saw a mere boy, but I was a veteran of 1,000 battles, trapped in a fragile shell. Facing him and the remaining archer, I knew one thing: I couldn't dodge forever. I had to strike first. "I've already figured out how you use blinking." The warrior leader roared, confident he had deciphered my moves. He unleashed a wave break to shatter the icy ground, expecting me to appear behind him, but I was one step ahead. Overconfidence. I thought, a smirk playing on my lips as I materialized right in front of him. His eyes widened in shock as I declared, "I caught you, you bastard!" My daggers poised to strike before he could recover. Blink! I materialized instantly behind the warrior leader, my dagger slashing not at him, but feinting toward the archer. "The back!" The leader shouted in alarm, spinning around too late. The archer, caught off guard, rolled away firing panicked shots. Pew, pew! That went wide. It was a calculated misdirection. I didn't need to kill the tank yet. I needed to isolate the damage dealer. In this 1v2, confusion was my greatest ally. Aga, se, Yuki. The warrior leader's chest heaved as he finally caught sight of the cliff edge, a desperate hope flickering in his eyes. He turned, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. "It's a cliff. It's right in front of you." His voice echoed across the icy chasm, a taunt aimed at the figure he thought was trapped. There is no other way. He believed the chase was over, that his prey was finally cornered, unaware of the deadly dance about to unfold. The blade sank deep, and the metallic tongue of blood filled the air. There was no hesitation. No guilt, just the cold, pulsating rhythm of life ending at my fingertips. I didn't even feel it. Because I only killed him so I could live. The warrior's bewildered shout broke the silence. His disbelief echoing my own impossible feat. What's wrong with him? It can't be blinking, right? But it was. And in this brutal reality, that split-second impossibility was the difference between life and death. My sixth sense, amplified by the curse of mana leakage, pulsed urgently. I didn't need to turn around. I could feel him. The spearman wasn't dead. He lay prone in the snow, just 3 meters behind me, feigning defeat, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. If I move even a little closer, he will be able to stab me. The warrior in front was a distraction. The real threat was at my back. I must handle him first. The battlefield echoed with a sickening crunch. Boom! I spun on my heel, driving the dagger deep into the unsuspecting back of the spearman behind me. He died instantly. No scream, no struggle, just a sudden, brutal silence. This guy. The warrior's face contorted in shock and rage as I snatched the spear from the corpse's grip. Now armed with a weapon that could reach him, the tables had turned. In this deadly game, hesitation was the only true enemy. I threw the dagger without giving the other person a chance to think. The blade spun through the air, a lethal distraction. He's moving to my side and aiming at my back. The warrior fell for the feint, swinging his shield wide to defend an attack that never came. Pooh! My spear found its mark, piercing straight through his unguarded neck. As his life faded, a triumphant message illuminated the battlefield. Episode 1, Escape from the Pursuers, has been completed. My knees buckled, and I collapsed onto the snow, my body trembling uncontrollably. It wasn't just the cold or the searing pain in my shin. It was the crushing weight of what I had just done. 5 corpses lay around me, silent testaments to my desperate struggle. HYUK, double quotes, my breath hitched. This was my first battle, my first use of blink in reality, and my first kill. The adrenaline faded, leaving behind a stark, brutal truth. I had become a killer to survive. The biting cold of the snow could not numb the throbbing pain in my broken shin. Surrounded by 5 cooling corpses, the illusion of a game shattered completely. This was visceral. This was how I wasn't just a player behind a screen anymore. I was Beak U Seal, the Flash Wizard. And to survive in this unforgiving world, I had stained my hands with blood. The gamer had died, and a survivor was born. I fumbled through the warrior's pockets, my fingers stiff with cold and adrenaline. UGGHHH, double quotes, the pain in my shin was a relentless throb, threatening to overwhelm my senses. My hand closed around a small glass bottle of potion. Without hesitation, I uncorked it and downed the red liquid. It tasted bitter and sweet, a nauseating mix that burned my throat. But as the warmth spread, dulling the agony, I knew it was the taste of survival. I filled my backpack with the spoils of battle, spears, crossbows, and a handful of coins stained with the blood of my pursuers. Blood-stained money is said to be filthy, but it doesn't really matter to someone who doesn't really have money. I gathered everything of value, my movements pragmatic and swift. These crude weapons were all I had until I could awaken my true potential. Survival wasn't just about fighting. It was about scavenging every advantage from the dead to ensure I wouldn't become one of them. The wagon rolled steadily toward Rizoica, but my mind was elsewhere. Hey, I'm sorry. How are you? The wizard leader's gentle inquiry broke my reverie. He pointed towards the corner of the carriage, where a small figure huddled under a gray robe. Are you sleeping well? The girl stirred slightly, a murmur escaping her lips. Though her face was hidden, an air of mystery clung to her, a silent enigma in a world of magic and monsters. Who was she, and why did she seem so familiar? From across the chasm, the wizards watched in disbelief as a figure defied the laws of magic. He is blinking. The leader's voice trembled. Blink, a spell infamous for its chaotic randomness, was being wielded with surgical precision. The boy wasn't just teleporting. He was gliding across the void, step by calculated step, turning floating stones into a bridge. To the onlookers, it was impossible. To Beak Useal, it was just another day of breaking the game. The peace was shattered by a shout. "Hey, it's dangerous!" The leader's warning came too late. I spun around, my heart pounding, just as two figures emerged from the fog behind me, pursuers. They had tracked me to the very edge of the abyss. Hurrek. A massive sphere of flame roared to life in one wizard's hand, while crackling lightning danced in the other's. "What the hell?" I muttered, realizing my escape was far from over. This wasn't just a crossing. It was an ambush. The ground beneath me exploded in a violent shower of rock and flame as a massive fireball obliterated the floating stone I had stood on mere seconds ago. Puffing, pah! I watched the debris plummet into the abyss, a chilling reminder of how close I was to death. He has terrible aim. But if I fell, I'd be shredded. The furious pursuers were relentless, their magic tearing apart my fragile path. It was a race against gravity and annihilation. Lacking defensive spells, I was forced into a lethal aerial circus. Pieing, the grappling wire became my lifeline, swinging me between treacherous floating stones. Fireballs rained down like meteors, and chain lightning hissed at my heels like venomous snakes. I dodged, blinked, and swung again, a desperate, dizzying dance over the misty abyss. To the onlookers, it was a breathtaking spectacle. To me, it was a terrifying, relentless fight to stay alive. The sky crackled with malevolent energy. A bolt of chain lightning sizzled towards me, a serpent of pure destruction. Damn it! Blink hasn't cooled down. Panic flared. I was suspended in midair, a sitting duck on a floating rock. The spell was unavoidable, designed to blind and paralyze. Fucking jigsaw! I cursed, my mind racing for an escape that didn't exist. Was this the end? Was all my struggle for nothing? As the lightning closed in, I could only clench my teeth and brace for impact. Just as the lightning was about to strike, a figure stepped forward. Get out of the way, the gray-robed girl, until now a silent passenger, unleashed a power that shocked even the veteran wizards. An ice spear, wreathed in crackling lightning, materialized before her. Pong! Two opposing forces collided in a blinding flash. She had intercepted the attack with a dual attribute spell, a feat of genius that defied her young age. 2 attributes. The wizards gaped, realizing they were in the presence of a prodigy. Harnessing the lightning's recoil, she launched the ice spear with terrifying velocity. Peck! It screamed past my face, a blur of frozen death, and impaled the wizard on the far cliff. To strike a target over 100 meters away with such devastating power, it wasn't just magic, it was an execution. The remaining pursuer froze, his will to fight shattered by this impossible display of talent. Safe on the other side, I caught my breath as the wizard leader extended a hand. "Good job. Are you an independent knight? Join us." His offer was tempting, but I shook my head, scratching my neck awkwardly. I'm just an aspiring wizard." The group's collective gasp of disbelief was almost comical. Nearby, the gray-robed girl sat quietly, her hood slipping just enough to reveal a glimpse of light blue hair. "Thank you for helping me," I murmured, struck by a sudden realization. Her voice is beautiful. The wagon's rhythm lulled me into a pensive mood. A holographic message flickered, announcing my next trial, Episode 2, Interstellar Academy. It was a simple command, yet it carried a weight heavier than any monster. Enter Academy. But what am I going to do in school life at my age? I sighed, staring into the distance. Surviving death was one thing. Surviving high school drama as a 29-year-old was a battlefield I wasn't prepared for. In the game, A scene transition was instantaneous. But reality is a bumpy wagon ride under the setting sun, surrounded by curious wizards asking about my unique magic. I offered only a mysterious smile, the unwritten code of a hidden master. They mocked my ignorance of common currency, calling me a peasant, but I didn't care. My eyes were fixed on the horizon. We were heading to Rizoica, the gateway to the magical city of Arcanium. The real game was about to begin. The cramped wagon was filled with the warm glow of sunset and curious gazes. "Ha! Is this your first time in a city? Where the hell did you learn that kind of magic?" The wizard's question was blunt, but not unkind. I didn't answer. Instead, I offered a small, enigmatic smile. In the world of wizards, silence is a shield, and a knowing smile implies a hidden master a perfect excuse to dodge questions I couldn't answer. It was a bluff, but it worked. The wizard unrolled a glowing map, his finger tracing a path towards a cluster of magical cities. "We are on our way to Rizoica," he explained, pointing to a satellite city orbiting the grand capital, Arcanium. The magic school Stella Academy was located in Arcanium. A wave of relief washed over me. I'm really glad that I saved myself from the trouble of going there separately. The journey was serendipitous. My destination aligned perfectly with theirs. No more wandering alone. What is the currency unit? My innocent question landed in the crowded wagon with a heavy thud. The wizard next to me raised an eyebrow, his expression a mix of amusement and pity. "Tut, you're a real peasant." His snide remark stung, but I kept my face neutral. It's better to be treated like a peasant for a short time than to be bullied for not knowing later. I swallowed my pride, accepting the role of the ignorant bumpkin. Information was power, and I was starting from zero. As the wagon creaked along, the wizard leader pointed to a small figure huddled in the corner. "Hey, I'm sorry. How are you? Are you sleeping well?" The gray-robed girl stirred slightly, her face hidden in shadow, responding with a faint murmur. Though silent, her presence was enigmatic, a quiet mystery amidst our journey to the magical city. Who was she, and what secrets lay beneath that hood? Lying back on the wagon seat, I gazed up at the night sky, my mind finally quieting. "Well, you're going to make it big in the future, ... Don't forget us later on, okay?" The wizard's kind words lingered as I closed my eyes. The chaos of survival had passed, replaced by the gentle sway of the carriage. Now, in the stillness, I could finally take stock of my new reality, my buddy alive, and for the first time since waking up in this world, I felt a flicker of hope. I checked my physical condition. Lifting the rough tunic, disbelief washed over me. This muscularity is not a joke. Chiseled abs and rock-hard pectorals stared back a physique far superior to my past self. Despite reverting to a teenager, this body held raw, latent power. The trash character wasn't weak. He was a weapon waiting to be forged. A holographic window materialized, detailing the curse that had plagued Beak U Seal, magic leakage delay LVL.1. Ironically, the very defect that stripped him of magic was now his lifeline. It was funny to think that I was still alive thanks to this magic delay, the skill granted him. Sixth sense and cognitive acceleration, abilities that allowed him to perceive threats before they struck. Without this paradoxical gift, he would have been dead long ago. I summoned the stat expecting the abysmal stats of a novice. Instead, the numbers defied logic. Strength and agility were well above average, but sense at 1-star 97% was a true anomaly. It seems I have received a portion of my past character's abilities. My 10 years of obsessive grinding weren't in vain. In this new reality, that experience had crystallized into a cheat code that put me steps ahead of everyone else. My finger hovered over the blue screen, then tapped decisively. I invested all of them in sense. The 1-star 97% bar filled instantly, transforming into 2-star 7%. In the game, Sense dictated reaction speed, a crucial stat. But in this reality, it was even more vital. It was the sharp edge between life and death. There was no way to raise sense unless it was through experience points. Muscle could be trained, but instinct had to be bought. The excitement of gaining power faded, replaced by a bleak reality. The future seemed bleak. Reaching the true ending felt impossible. Even if I restored my game stats, stronger foes lurked in the shadows. The magic leakage delay was a ticking time bomb, an incurable curse. If I didn't treat it with proper training, I won't be able to live long. My only hope lay within the walls of Stella Academy. Destiny had left me no other choice. A new, holographic message shimmered into existence, this time glowing with a golden, promising light. The Constellation Project presents a special reward for you. My weary eyes widened. The options were tempting. A downgraded item, a skill, or experience points. Wow, a rare smile touched my lips. It seems those friends who dragged me all the way here seemed to at least have some morals. In this dark, dangerous world, a little help went a long way. The sight stole my breath away. Arcanium, the magical city, suspended in the night sky. It wasn't just a city. It was a colossal, floating carousel ablaze with 5 dazzling colors. I realized I was in another world, below me. The lights of prestigious academies and mage towers twinkled like stars fallen to earth. This wasn't a game render anymore. It was a living, breathing metropolis of magic, and I had finally arrived. The cramped wagon was filled with the warm glow of sunset and curious gazes. "Ha! Is this your first time in a city? Where the hell did you learn that kind of magic?" The wizard's question was blunt, but not unkind. I didn't answer. Instead, I offered a small, enigmatic smile. In the world of wizards, silence is a shield, and a knowing smile implies a hidden master a perfect excuse to dodge questions I couldn't answer. It was a bluff, but it worked. Settling back into the seat, I summoned the system window to claim my promised reward. I was promised one of 3 rewards. My fingers hovered over the options, but one by one they were grayed out. Halo Flash, to high grade. Hyperspace Blink. Impossible. A new restriction blocked my path. Your narrative power is lacking. The item landed softly in my hand, a pair of unassuming, round-rimmed glasses. Copper glasses. Though stripped of its advanced features, its core function remained total recall. These glasses remember everything you have seen, heard, and read. For a player who had lost 10 years of game knowledge, this was the ultimate lifeline. I clenched my fist, a smirk playing on my lips. Good. Do that. With these, I could reclaim my lost memories and master this world once more. Placing the glasses on my face, a cascade of blue holographic folders filled my vision. When I put on the glasses, a slew of information folders appeared. Alchemy ingredients, hunting ground, dungeon. The categories were extensive, a testament to my years of gameplay. But as I scrolled down to character, the folders for Isomorph and Hongbayon were jarringly empty. Unfortunately, the story was not recorded. Still, for a prize obtained in a new world, this database of knowledge was a fortune. It's good enough. The airship deck bustled with students, their chatter a cacophony of aristocratic snobbery. Look at that jerk looking around. You must be from the village. Their whispers were meant to be hushed, but my sensitive hearing caught every disdainful word. Stella allows commoners? What a downgrade. Leaning against the railing, I sighed, the cool night breeze ruffling my hair. Ah, it's always like that wherever the kids go. Teenagers were the same everywhere, arrogant, cliquish, and utterly predictable. A mischievous smirk tugged at the corner of my mouth. Look, they're smoking. I pointed an accusatory finger at a group of aristocratic students, my voice loud enough to attract attention. Yeah, Arcanium is a no-smoking zone for teenagers. A sailor, visibly enraged, charged towards the culprits. As chaos erupted among the nobles, I leaned back, satisfied, and I acted like an adult. Sometimes, the best way to deal with annoying brats is to let the rules do the dirty work. The sailor's face flushed with anger as he held up the incriminating evidence. "This is a cigarette." The young noble's facade crumbled, replaced by panicked bluster. "Let it go. I am the heir of Baron Dennington of the Kingdom of Adolavita." The commotion died instantly as if silenced by a spell. A girl appeared among the calm. She was a vision of otherworldly beauty, her silver hair cascading like moonlight and her blood-red eyes piercing through the crowd. Others lived in a 4.8 OP world, while she lived in a 108 OP60 Full HD world. Her presence was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the mundane reality around her, Hong by Yorna Dolovit. The villainous, even the arrogant noble heir quailed before her gaze. "Wow, she's a celebrity." The commotion died instantly as if silenced by a spell. A girl appeared among the calm. She was a vision of otherworldly beauty, her silver hair cascading like moonlight and her blood-red eyes piercing through the crowd. Others lived in a 4.8 OP world, while she lived in a 108 OP60 Full HD world. "Hey, isn't that Isel?" The whispers were laced with venom. "Salty mistress," they sneered. I adjusted my glasses, bringing the solitary blue-haired girl into focus. The holographic text that materialized was a litany of despair. "Eldest daughter of Grand Duke Morph deceased. Family ruins." But one line stood out, cold and absolute. Days later on my heart sank. The students saw a fallen noble to mock. I saw a character walking towards an inevitable, tragic end. Is she that salty mistress? The gray robe from this morning. The pieces fell into place, connecting the mysterious girl from the wagon to the fallen noble before me. But the true horror wasn't her reputation. It was the cold prophecy. Dies later on. In the gaming community, the word death wasn't used lightly for a playable character. It means her death is unstoppable. No matter what she dies, watching her read quietly, oblivious to her doom, I felt a chill. Her fate wasn't just a tragedy. It was a sealed verdict. The grand auditorium of Stellar Academy buzzed with the vice principal's booming voice. A wizard's destiny is to protect the world from darkness. He spoke passionately of black demons and duty, attempting to ignite a fire in the freshmen. But amidst the sea of stiff uniforms, I could only feel a crushing boredom. I adjusted my glasses, staring blankly ahead as the speech dragged on. "I'm fucking bored. Vice-Principal preaching about discipline the very second we step through the gates. Some things never change, even in a fantasy world. There should be another one from the modern era. I scanned the sea of uniforms until my gaze locked on a girl with short brown hair. She stood there, radiating the unmistakable aura of a protagonist amidst the crowd. Logic dictated that allying with a fellow Earthling would increase my chances of survival. It would be better to be associated with a similar modern person. But as I watched her, hesitation took root. I knew nothing of her character, her tropes, or her role. Risking my life on an unknown variable was a gamble I couldn't afford. With a cold pragmatism, I turned away. I abandoned the plan. A new character named Full Frame Dot, I watched the brown-haired girl, who radiated the unmistakable light of a protagonist. She was an anomaly added in a later updated transmigrator from the modern world who had read the romance novel. Don't love the unhappy princess. She thinks she's living in a romance novel, unlike me, who treated this as a survival strategy game. She was here for the drama. Knowing the future made her a dangerous variable, not an ally. I adjusted my glasses coldly. I'll let her play her role. I have my own ending to reach. They were Hewen Ryang, Isel, Full Frame, and Hong Bai Yeon, standing in a cluster of perfection. They radiated an aura that separated them from the mundane crowd. Wow, how do they all have such great hair and look so good? The whispers of admiration were impossible to ignore. They were the dazzling protagonists, the ones destined for greatness. A bitter smile tugged at my lips as I faced my own reality. Unlike them, who everyone looked up to, I was ranked last out of 1,141 people in this story. They were the stars, and I was merely the dust beneath their feet. Hewan Ryang, Isel, full frame, and Hong Bayon, they stood like gods, bathed in admiration. Perfect stats, perfect futures, the true protagonists. Contrast that with my reality. Ranked last out of 1,141 students, I wasn't even a supporting character. I was background noise. A bitter smile touched my lips as the gap between us became painfully clear. But being at the bottom has its perks. I adjusted my glasses. I shot behind the lenses. It means I have nowhere to go but up. The tension in the exam hall was suffocating, thick with the hum of mana being channeled by hundreds of prodigies. While they prepared dazzling spells, I stood motionless, a drop of cold sweat tracing my jawline. Without mana, this test is a death sentence. But I wasn't empty-handed. My fingers brushed against the cold metal rim in my pocket, the copper glasses. To others, it was trash. To me, it was the ultimate cheat code. A smirk tugged at my lips. Who needs magic when you have the strategy guide? My hand froze as it brushed the cold metal frames in my pocket. Wait, a sudden jolt of realization struck like lightning. These weren't just useless items. They were a database of my past life. These glasses. They hold every book, every spell formula I ever read in the game library. The answer to this hopeless test wasn't in my non-existent mana, but locked away in these lenses. A desperate situation instantly flipped into a winning hand. Idea! A vice-like grip crushed my wrist, freezing my hand midair. Cold sweat trickled down my neck as a formidable shadow loomed over me. Hold it. The voice was low, authoritative, and terrifying. It was Professor Lee Hanwal. His sharp gaze pierced through me, locking onto the glasses in my hand. What's that? Using personal items without prior approval is a violation of the exam rules. I gulped, the sheer pressure of the tiger professor weighing down on me. Pardon. I stammered. Caught red-handed before I could even equip my cheat item. This wasn't just bad. It was a disaster. Professor Lee, Hanwal snatched the glasses, his sharp gaze boring into the holographic status window. If this is a mana-amplifying artifact, you will be expelled immediately. The silence in the exam hall was deafening. I clenched my sweaty palms. Please, let the downgrade be enough. After an agonizing minute, the professor's frown deepened not in anger, but in confusion. The copper glasses displayed no magical properties whatsoever. It's trash, he muttered. I quickly interjected, acting the part of a nervous student. My eyesight is terrible, sir. I need them to aim, Hanwal scoffed, tossing the glasses back. To think a wizard needs corrective lenses. Uzi them. Crash! The sound of shattering glass pierced the silence. The mana measuring sphere, intended to glow gently, now lay in ruins on the desk. You, double quotes Professor Lee Hanwal's voice dropped an octave, his eyes twitching. Did you just crush a relic worth a fortune with your bare hands? I gulped, sweat beading on my forehead. Felt a surge. It was a lie to cover my clumsiness, but the whispers erupted. He overloaded it. Monster. A simple accident was rapidly spiraling into a legend of terrifying, uncontrollable power. A truly catastrophic misunderstanding. Do you think this is a joke? Professor Lee, Hanwal's roar shook the room as he pointed accusingly at the shattered remains of the mana sphere. Behind him, the students whispered in a mix of fear and awe. He destroyed it instantly. Is he a monster? I stood frozen, my internal scream drowning out the noise. I'm not a cheat character. I'm a trash character who can't even use mana. But in their eyes, my incompetence was being rewritten as terrifying, suppressed power. A complete and utter misunderstanding had begun. Do you think this is a joke? The professor's anger was palpable, pointing at the debris, but the reaction from the class was even more absurd. Amazing. He's strong. Double quotes, the whispers of admiration began to spread like wildfire. They thought I was a hidden genius who crushed the test with overwhelming power. I stood there, trembling not from mana, but from sheer panic. I'm not a cheat character. I screamed silently. I'm a trash character who can't even use mana. But in their eyes, a legend was born from a complete and utter misunderstanding. Under the dim lamp, Professor Lee Hanwell stared at the test paper, his calculations shattered. The 3 questions of the devil were designed to crush the arrogance of geniuses, a trap no one was meant to solve. Yet, Beak Yu Seal, a student with no mana, casually dismantled that impossibility, forcing the creation of the unprecedented rank S0. The 3 questions of the devil were nonsense riddles meant to humble the arrogant elites. As expected, the geniuses crumbled, trapped by their own complex knowledge. Yet, an anomaly occurred. Beak Yu Seal, he didn't use formulas. He saw through the absurdity instantly. The professor's trap had backfired, caught by the one student who knew nothing of magic. Professor Lee, Hanwell's gaze bore into the student file, his suspicion deepening with every line. Beak Yu Seal, a student with negligible mana, who barely scrapped through the entrance exam. Yet, he dismantled the 3 questions of the devil with terrifying ease. The discrepancy was maddening. Was this sheer luck, or was the boy mocking the very essence of their magic? Under the watchful eye of the headmistress, Hanwell realized this Class S0 student was a variable they could neither calculate nor control. Professor Lee, Hanwell stared at the file, his confusion mounting. Beak Yu Seal, a student who aced the written exam yet possessed negligible mana. The principal's personal note regarding his control of blinking only deepened the mystery. Was he a genius, hiding in plain sight, or a dangerous glitch in the system? Staring at the profile of the first-class S0 student, Hanwell realized that the dismantling of his devil's questions was no accident. A storm was coming to Stella. The room echoed with a heavy thud as Professor Lee, Hanwell slammed his hand onto the file. Was Beak Yu Seal a stroke of luck or a hidden monster? He possessed no mana, yet he dismantled the devil's questions with ease. Hanwell's eyes narrowed in determination, sweat beading on his brow. He would not be fooled by mere numbers. We'll find out soon, he declared. The unprecedented Class S0 experiment had begun, and Hanwell was determined to expose the truth behind this anomaly. The massive digital bulletin board illuminated the campus, listing the fates of over 1,000 new students like a neon sign. Standing amidst the anxious crowd, Beak Yu Seal sighed at the archaic method. What era is this? A public board instead of private mail. He grumbled internally. He watched the scrolling names, unaware that his own placement was about to turn the entire school upside down. The campus buzzed with disbelief as students flocked to the digital bulletin board. The name Beak Yu Seal on everyone's lips. Zero magic power, how did he get into Class S? The rumors spread like wildfire, painting him as either a fraud or a monster in disguise. Standing amidst the ridicule and awe, Beak Yu Seal sighed deeply. He realized that his dream of a peaceful, low-profile school life had shattered the moment his name appeared on that list. Beak Yu Seal frantically scanned the bottom of the list, his eyes darting across the Class F section. It had to be here. He had 0 mana and had only answered 3 questions, a guaranteed ticket to the bottom. Yet, his name was missing. Impossible, double quotes, he muttered, his face pale with shock. Behind him, whispers erupted like venom. Isn't that the 0-point guy? Standing before the glowing board, Beak Useal realized with horror that his calculated failure had gone terribly wrong. Beak Useal's face drained of color as he stared at the empty space in the Class F list. Did I fail? Expelled for scoring too low. Panic surged through him as the worst-case scenario played out in his mind. He had aimed for the bottom, but this was a disaster. I was confident I'd rank last, but 0 points? Is this some comedic punishment? He wailed internally, fists clenching in despair. He trembled, believing his academy life was over, completely unaware that his failure was actually a historic anomaly. Beak Useal's trembling finger froze as he spotted the impossible. Glowing in a solitary, Elite Block was his name, Class S. The crowd erupted in shock. Isn't that Beak Useal? But Useal felt his soul leave his body. Why is my name there? You've got to be kidding me, he wailed, tears streaming down his face. He hadn't just passed. He had accidentally catapulted himself to the center of attention. His plan for a quiet life was officially dead. This is all wrong. I'm just a trash character. Beak Useal screamed, tears streaming down his face. He was a Monoless Extra, doomed to fail, yet the board declared him Elite Class S to the whispering crowd. However, his panic looked like the eccentric behavior of a hidden monster. He must be hiding his mana sphere, they murmured in awe. As Useal fell to his knees in despair, the Academy hailed the birth of a new genius. A catastrophic misunderstanding had begun. Beak Useal stared at the glowing letters Class S, his panic settling into a cold, heavy resignation. There was no use crying over spilt milk. The system wouldn't change. Fine, he muttered, adjusting his glasses with a sharp glint in his eyes. I'll just survive quietly and do my job properly. Turning his back on the chaotic crowd, he walked toward the Academy buildings. He convinced himself that a peaceful life was still possible, blissfully ignoring the storm gathering around his every step. In the suffocating darkness of the discipline room, Princess Hong Baiyan knelt, her silver hair cascading over trembling shoulders. 3 incorrect questions. The matriarch's cold voice pierced the silence, shattering the girl's pride. She, the genius of Adolivit, had been humiliated by a Monoless commoner. Gritting her teeth in the gloom, Baiyan realized this wasn't just a failure, it was the ignition of a burning obsession with the anomaly named Beak Useal. The sharp sound of a slap shattered the silence of the hall. Hong Baiyan's head snapped to the side, a burning red mark blooming on her pale cheek. There was no excuse. The verdict was absolute. For a royal to fall behind a Monoless commoner was a disgrace that could only be washed away with perfection. Swallowing the metallic taste of blood and humiliation, she swore she would never lose again. Papers scattered like shattered pride around the kneeling princess. You are no better than those bugs. The matriarch's words were a verdict, stripping Hong Baiyan of her nobility. To lose to a Monoless commoner was not just failure. Tu was a sin. Clenching her fists in the silence, Baiyan's shame curdled into a cold, dark obsession with the one who caused this fall, Beak Useal. You have to become better than your sister. The matriarch's scream echoed like a curse, reminding Hong Baiyan that in the Adolivit family, second place was a sin. Kneeling on the cold floor, Baiyan absorbed the toxicity of her mother's obsession, her own identity crushed under the weight of expectation. Yes, mother, she replied mechanically, hiding the turmoil within. The shadow of her superior sister loomed large, turning her bloodline into a suffocating shackle. This pressure would become the fuel for her desperate rivalry with Beak Useal. Stepping into Class S, Beak Useal felt the heavy atmosphere. This wasn't a classroom, it was a den of antisocial monsters. Ruined from the start, he thought, observing the eccentric elites, who barely acknowledged each other's existence. Standing frozen at the entrance, the Monoless commoner sweated nervously. He realized that surviving among these silent geniuses, who treated social skills as optional, might be harder than fighting a dragon. Beak U Seal's gaze swept across the silent classroom, locking onto the figures that define this world's destiny. Ma Yu Seong, the dazzling protagonist, Isel, the tragic heroine, and Hong Bai Yeon, the villainess radiating a terrifying chill. They were all here, gathered in one suffocating space. I just want to be an extra, he lamented internally, realizing that avoiding the main plot while sitting in the eye of the storm was an impossible dream. The gears of fate had begun to turn, and he was trapped right in the middle. The academy hallway transformed into a swirling vortex of rumors, with every whisper converging on a single anomaly, Beak U Seal. He resonated with an upper intermediate Kani and used blink. The air crackled with disbelief, and fearless students debated the impossible. A magic deemed suicidal trash and a student written off as a failure had suddenly paralyzed the campus with shock. Walking through the storm of gossip, Fulheim realized that the established order of Stella was crumbling. Dismantled by the very boy everyone had mocked. Amidst the chaotic whispers about upper intermediate canes and forbiddance magic, Beak U Seal stood isolated in the crowd, his eyes fixed not on the gossipers, but on a silver pocket watch. While the students analyzed his legendary feats, he was coldly calculating the cooldown of his survival. "Time is ticking," he murmured, clutching the watch as if it were a lifeline. To the world, he looked like a profound genius pondering deep magic. In reality, he was a desperate survivor counting down the seconds to the next inevitable disaster. The classroom air froze as the door slid open. Professor Lee Hanwal entered, his jagged scar and predatory gaze silencing the elite students instantly. This wasn't a teacher. This was a warrior. "Nice to meet you." "I am Lee Hanwal," he announced, his voice low but dripping with menace. The Tiger of Stella had arrived. As the students trembled under his overwhelming pressure, they realized that surviving his class might be their hardest test yet. "This is a battlefield, not a school." Professor Hanwal's roar shook the classroom wall. His scarred face twisted into a terrifying scowl as he declared their sole duty to become magic warriors capable of slaughtering black demons. The sheer weight of his aura crushed the students' breath. In that moment, the elites realized that their noble titles meant nothing here, only power and survival matter. The heavy silence of the classroom was shattered as the door flung open. Hong Bai Yeon, the princess of Adulavit, stood there breathless, breaking her perfect composure. The students gasped, not at her tardiness, but at the unnatural flush on her cheeks. While the class mistook it for embarrassment, Beak U Seal's sharp eyes saw the truth, the stinging mark of a slap. He realized, with a chill, that the villainess's tragedy had begun. Her pride crushed by her family, she walked to her seat with eyes burning in shame, marking the start of her desperate vendetta against him. Beak U Seal adjusted his glasses, his eyes widening as he scanned the holographic status window hovering beside Hong Bai Yeon. The glowing text unconditional death struck him like a curse. She wasn't just a villainess. She was a victim destined to be crushed between the protagonist's rise and her mother's toxic ambition. "This is worse than I thought," he realized with a chill. The silent girl sitting next to him was walking straight toward an inevitable doom, and he was the only one who could see the cliff edge. Hong Bai Yeon walked down the aisle, her silence heavy with suppressed shame. The only empty seat was next to the very source of her confusion, Beak U Seal. As she sat down, avoiding all eye contact, she remained oblivious to the blue status window floating beside her, screaming her tragic fate, villainous. Beak U Seal watched her, realizing that this simple choice of seat had sealed their connection. She was a ticking time bomb, and he was now sitting right in the blast zone. Out of 160 empty seats, why, right behind me. Beak U Seal's internal scream went unheard as a chilling presence settled at his back. He didn't dare turn around, yet the villainess's shadow felt suffocating. In that moment of cold sweat, he realized his dream of a peaceful life was dead on arrival. His school life hadn't just begun. It had already twisted into a chaotic disaster from the very start. The grand hall pulsated with magical energy as countless canes floated in the air like stars in a localized galaxy. Professor Lee, Hanwell stood before the floating arsenal, his voice commanding absolute attention. "From now on, you will inherit a cane. Choose carefully, or it chooses you." Standing among the nervous students, Beak Useal tightened his grip. In a world where the weapon chooses the wizard, a student without mana was walking into a minefield. One wrong choice, and his secret would be exposed to the entire academy. Amidst the dazzling array of floating weaponry, Beak Useal's mind worked like a tactical computer, stripping away the mystique of magic to reveal cold, hard mechanics. To him, these weren't just ancient conduits, they were firearms. A staff is a heavy sniper rifle, destructive but sluggish. A wand is an assault rifle, rapid and versatile, for a mana less irregular who lived and died by the split-second timing of blink. Mobility was his only lifeline. "I'll go with the wand," he concluded, locking in the weapon that would turn him into a close-quarters nightmare rather than a traditional mage. As Beak Useal moved to claim his weapon, a heavy hand clamped onto his shoulder, halting his steps. "I don't understand why you're in Class S." A student sneered, his face twisted in disdain as he blocked the path. No aspirations, no aggression. To these battle-hungry elites, Useal's calculated choice of a simple wand looked like cowardice. Useal simply stared back with dead eyes, sighing internally. He realized that in this academy, even the simple act of choosing a weapon came with a side serving of unnecessary drama. A blue status window flickered into existence, mercilessly exposing the truth behind the provocateur's bravado. YUS Lek, Prince Jeremy's bread shuttle. Beak Useal's gaze shifted from indifference to sheer pity. The guy acting like a predator was just a bottom feeder in the school's ecosystem. A third-rate bully, Useal sighed internally. The intimidation attempt crumbled instantly as he realized he was being threatened by a glorified errand boy who wasn't even worth his time. Uselek smirked, pointing arrogantly at a floating masterpiece. "I'm going to pick that one. So watch carefully." The holographic tag flashed. Edmeriet Temiri, an upper intermediate grade weapon. Beak Useal watched impassively, his mind instantly analyzing the specs. "That's a level only professional magic warriors use," he thought. The bully saw a trophy to flaunt his status, but Useal saw a disaster waiting to happen. To wield a weapon that powerful without the skill to match was not ambition, it was suicide. Uselek collapsed to the floor, the recoil from the high-level cane bringing him to his knees. Humiliated and enraged, he lashed out, firing a desperate burst of magic at the student who dared to look down on him. Pong! The spell shattered uselessly. Beak Useal didn't even flinch. Sitting calmly amidst the chaos, he peered down at the trembling bully not with fear, but with cold pity. A person should accept their own limitations, you know. He lectured flatly. It wasn't a duel. It was a brutal reality check delivered by a mana-less elite. The hall fell silent as Ma Yu-seong, the destined hero, stepped forward. There was no hesitation, no struggle. As he grasped the wand, a blinding pillar of blue mana erupted, shaking the very air with a deafening hum. It was a display of raw, overwhelming talent that made the previous chaos look like child's play. Watching the dazzling spectacle from his seat, Beak Useal let out a weary sigh. He succeeded too easily. Unbelievable, he thought. It was a stark, brutal reminder of the unbridgeable gap between a desperate survivor and a God-favored genius. The hall erupted in disbelief. He resonated with an upper intermediate cane on the first try. Ma Yu-seong didn't just succeed. Automated. As the students gazed in awe at the genius amongst geniuses, a different murmur began to ripple through the crowd. Wait, look there. Fulheim found the Terraphon. While everyone was blinded by the hero's light, Another heavy hitter was making their move. The gap between the true elites and the rest was becoming terrifyingly clear. As Fulime held the glowing Terraphon, Beak Useel's face paled. This wasn't supposed to happen. If she resonates with that now, Ma Yuxiang's hero route will be completely erased. He panicked internally. The game's scenario was derailing right in front of him. Sweat trickled down his temple as he frantically weighed his options. Should he intervene and risk exposure, or watch the timeline collapse? Should I give her a hint? He thought desperately, realizing that a broken plot meant an unpredictable and deadly future. With a feint she cutting through the air, space folded. In the blink of an eye, Beak Useel vanished from his seat and materialized right beside Fulime. The sudden movement startled her, breaking her trance over the legendary Terraphon. Ha! She gasped, eyes wide in surprise. Ignoring the shock, rippling through the room at his speed, Useel leaned in with a casual, yet calculated calmness. "What wand are you gonna choose?" he asked. It seemed like idle chatter, but it was a desperate tactical maneuver to divert her attention and steer the crumbling timeline back on track. Beak Useel's calculated attempt at distraction hit an unexpected wall. Instead of the friendly response he anticipated from the game's lore, Fulime's eyes narrowed with sharp suspicion. "Why do you care?" "Go choose your own cane," she snapped, coldly drawing a line between them. Useel remained outwardly calm, but his mind raced in confusion. This is wrong, he thought. Fulime is supposed to be a sociable mediator, not this guarded fortress. He realized with a jolt that the characters had deviated from their scripts, adding a dangerous layer of unpredictability to his survival plan. Subtlety won't work, Beak Useel decided, abandoning his cautious approach. He pointed directly at the unassuming silver wand floating nearby, forcing the issue. "I heard rumors about that one. Wouldn't it suit you?" It was a blunt, dangerous gamble to reveal such hidden knowledge. Fulime's eyes widened in shock as she finally focused on the legendary Terraphon. The fatal hint had been dropped. Useel held his breath, hoping his persistence was enough to force the stubborn heroine back onto her destined path before the plot collapsed completely. Snap! The sharp sound echoed like a gunshot. The legendary wand, Terraphon ignored Fulime completely and flew straight into Beak Useel's hand. He froze, his mind crashing as the weight of the silver wand settled in his palm. Fulime's eyes widened in disbelief. Her destiny had just been hijacked right in front of her. "Why is this in my hand?" Useel panicked internally, staring at the artifact in horror. He had intervened to save the plot, but fate played a cruel joke. Instead of a guide, he had become a thief, accidentally stealing a main character's weapon and shattering the original scenario into pieces. As Beak Useel grasped the handle, a blinding pillar of light erupted. The deafening resonance rivaling Ma Yuxiang's earlier display, woo woo woo. The sound was not a melody, but a siren of catastrophe. The crowd gasped, whispering in awe that the legendary Terraphon had chosen him, but Useel was screaming internally, "I'm doomed! Screw this!" He thought, sweating profusely as the wand pulsed with unwanted power. He tried to fix the plot, but instead, he accidentally declared himself a genius rival, destroying his peaceful life completely. "I'm doomed!" Very badly screwed. Beak Useel's internal scream went unheard as the glowing wand settled in his hand. Fulime stared blankly, her destined weapon stolen by the class extra. The room fell into a suffocating silence, broken only by the whispers of awe from the crowd, who mistook a disaster for a miracle. Standing at the epicenter of the glowing light, Useel realized with horror, by stealing the heroine's power, he had just shattered the game scenario and made himself the world's biggest target. The academy hallway became a vortex of gossip, swirling around one name, Beak Useel. resonate with Upper Rinconi Hughesblink. The taboo magic, long considered suicidal, had resurfaced to haunt the elites. Aisel stood frozen in shock, unable to comprehend the anomaly, while Hongi Bayen cut through the noisy crowd with an icy, determined glare. The hierarchy was cracking. A monolith student had just turned their rigid world upside down. Fulime, are you joining the study group? The hallway buzzed around Fulime, the Academy's dazzling social butterfly. She navigated the crowd with a practiced smile, her charisma effortless. But watching her, a chilling realization hit. Aisel, standing stiffly nearby, wasn't just observing, she was mimicking. The copycat was learning to wear a mask of sociability. It was a perfect, terrifying performance of survival, hiding the desperate emptiness within. Why is your style similar to mine? The question cut through the hallway chatter as Aisel faced a new presence. Approaching with an aura of absolute confidence was Hei-Wan Rying, the heir to the Tower of the Full Moon. His sharp eyes didn't just see a student, they analyzed a potential rival. For Aisel, who survived by mimicking others, this encounter was a warning. Standing before the scion of a 9th-class master, she realized her camouflage was wearing thin. The hierarchy of geniuses was closing in. Beak Yu-Seal walked down the aisle, the heavy silence broken only by stinging whispers. Is that him? I heard he got 0 points. Double quotes, the skepticism was palpable as the elites dissected the anomaly in their midst. He wasn't just a student. He was a specimen under a microscope. Ignoring the hostile glares drilling into him, Yu-Seal sighed internally. I'm annoyed by the look of their faces, he grumbled, fighting the urge to roll his eyes. This wasn't a classroom. It was a tiger's den where the weak were eaten alive. He had walked straight into the belly of the beast. And this devastating first impression was just the beginning of his survival game. Ma Yu-Seong, the crown prince of Scalban and the world's destined protagonist, sat silently amidst the chaos. He tried to focus on his mana circulation, but the incessant buzzing about Beak Yu-Seal was testing his patience. To him, a student with 0 mana shouldn't even be a blip on his radar. Yet this extra had stolen the legendary Terraphon and disrupted the class's hierarchy. His cold blue eyes narrowed in irritation as he glanced at the anomaly. You're just a loud bug, he thought dismissively, deciding to ignore the noise. Unaware that this bug was about to rewrite the hero's journey he took for granted. Professor Kyle's lecture on mana sensitivity filled the room. But for Beak Yu-Seal, it might as well have been alien gibberish. I have 0 mana. What's the point? He sighed internally, staring blankly ahead as the elites around him scribbled notes furiously. Naturally, his glazed look of boredom was misinterpreted by the class as the arrogance of a prodigy who found the curriculum beneath him. He wasn't studying. He was just enduring the torture of a useless lesson. Beak Yu-Seal's glazed eyes didn't go unnoticed. Beak Yu-Seal, Professor Kyle's voice sliced through the air like a blade. Since you find my class boring enough to ignore, surely you can solve this. He pointed to a complex mana resonance formula on the board. The classroom fell deathly silent. It wasn't a question. It was a calculated trap to humiliate the student with 0 mana sensitivity. Yu-Seal sighed internally, realizing the professor intended to use him as a public example of failure. Is he serious? The classroom erupted in stifled giggles as Beak Yu-Seal stood up. Professor Kyle watched with cold amusement, convinced that the monoless student would crumble before the complex resonance formula. Delichi's this was public execution of the class's view. However, Yu-Seal's face remained dangerously calm. So much drama for a simple equation, he thought, walking to the podium under the heavy gaze of the geniuses. The failure of Class S was about to turn the tables on his own humiliation. Beak Yu-Seal stood before the blackboard, the complex magic formula looming over him like a judgment. Professor Kyle smirked, waiting for the inevitable humiliation. But to Yu Seal, this insurmountable theory was mere child's play. Snap! The sharp sound of breaking chalk cut through the silence like a gunshot. With casual indifference, he scribbled the solution in seconds, the chalk crumbling under the weight of his undeniable logic. Tossing the broken fragments aside, he turned to the stunned professor with a bored gaze. "Is that all?" In that instant, the mockery in the room evaporated, replaced by the suffocating silence of pure shock. Beak Yu Seal pushed up his glasses, a sharp glint reflecting off the lenses like a blade being drawn. To the sneering class, he was just a monolith student posturing. To him, he was engaging his combat mode. His weapon wasn't a high-grade cane or a destructive spell, but the sentience that decoded the world's laws and the broken piece of chalk in his hand. Staring at the chaotic formula on the board, he didn't see a problem, he saw a target to be dismantled. The classroom was his battlefield, and he was fully equipped to dominate. "Your premise is wrong." Beak Yu Seal's voice cut through the shock like a knife. He tapped the board, not as a student, but as an authority exposing a fatal error. "You tried to trap me with an impossible equation. But you forgot the basic law of mana interference." Professor Kyle's face twisted from smugness to sheer humiliation. The trash student hadn't just solved the problem. He had dismantled the teacher's logic entirely. As the elite stared in disbelief, Yu Seal dusted off his hands. He had turned a public execution into his own coronation as the master of theory. "Are you saying my interpretation is wrong?" Professor Kyle grit his teeth, his pride cracking under the weight of the student's logic. Beak Yu Seal didn't flinch. "Yes, the 3 questions of the devil aren't unsolvable. Your formula is just incorrect." The brutal truth slammed into the classroom. The problem wasn't the student's lack of skew, but the teacher's flawed theory. As whispers of its Beak Yu Seal spread like wildfire, the elites realized with horror that the Manhwa boy hadn't just solved a problem, he had schooled the professor. "Is that enough?" With a weary sigh, Beak Yu Seal turned his back on the paralyzed professor and the stunned class. He walked back to his seat, indifferent to the heavy silence that had replaced the mockery. To the elites, he had performed a miracle. To him, he merely corrected a typo in a broken system. What a drag, he thought, adjusting his glasses to hide his annoyance. Yet, us. He withdrew. He failed to notice the burning gaze of Isel behind him. The copycat was no longer looking at a failure, but at a puzzle she was desperate to solve. Isel's attempt to slip away unnoticed was cut short as a looming shadow barred her path. Hei Wanrying, the heir to the full moon, stood with crossed arms, his sharp gaze dissecting her very existence. "If you live so hard, you'll be short-lived," he stated coldly, seeing right through her facade of tireless effort. To him, her desperate struggle to keep up wasn't ambition. It was a death sentence. Isel froze, her secret burden heavier than ever. In this class of monsters, even her silence was being analyzed by a genius who knew the cost of power all too well. "You are uselessly diligent." Hei Wanrying's words pierced Isel like a cold needle. He saw through her desperate mimicry a survival tactic that was slowly burning her life force away. "If you die, don't call me to the funeral," he scoffed, leaving her isolated in the hallway. Isel bit her lip, the weight of her secret crushing her chest. She knew the price of her deception, but with the anomaly Beak Yu Seal disrupting the prophecy, she had to gamble everything just to stay in the game.